Back everyone to this final series of talks in this fantastic conference honoring Professor Raghunathan. It's a great pleasure to welcome Professor Nimish Shah from the Ohio State University, who is going to tell us about sharp conditions for equidistribution of translates of a subspace of a horosphere by a diagonal flow in the space of unimodular lattices. Nimish, please go ahead.
First, I'm very much honored that the committee chose me to speak here, and it's such a great pleasure to be able to speak on the 80th birthday of Professor Raghunathan. I'm extremely happy about it, and very happy birthday, Professor Raghunathan.
Thank you.
Today, what I'm going to speak was a question that was motivated by a work of Kleinbach and Margulis. So they resolved a Sprinzuk conjecture on Diophantine approximation using a homogeneous dynamics method. And let me just first say a very special case of what they have proved, and that will motivate what I want to do next. So we start with a group SLNR and lattice SLNZ, and we take a finite, finite interval J and consider a function which is analytic from J to Rn minus 1. So this is SLNR, and this goes into Rn minus 1. What is the use of this function? I'll explain now. You look at a diagonal flow, t to the power n minus 1, t inverse. This is n minus 1 times. So that's an element of SLNR. And given any unipotent element, given any element of Rn minus 1, I will arrange in this manner that I'll put 1 on the diagonal, and here is this n minus 1 coordinates. And then when I say U of phi s, I mean a curve inside a unipotent group, and the curve is like it's all 1 on the diagonal, but in the upper line there is phi 1s to phi n minus 1s. So this is a curve in this unipotent group, and the unipotent group of this kind, all possible x1 to xn minus 1, that is expanding horosphere of AT. So when AT conjugates elements of SLNR, these are precisely the elements which get fully expanded by AT when t goes to plus infinity. So what they proved is the following, that given any point in this quotient space SLNR mod SLNZ, there exists a compact set depending on some epsilon. So you start with an let epsilon be positive, and you get a compact set k epsilon in G mod gamma, so that if you look at this trajectory from X, you look at the trajectory of this unipotent group. So this is U of phi s. So it's some kind of curve in Rn minus 1 here. And you apply that to X and then translate by AT. This curve is parameterized by S. So you look at all those S in this interval J, for which this translate goes inside the compact set k epsilon. So k epsilon is some compact set depending on epsilon. And then the relative measure of so those S which fall into this compact set is bigger than or equal to 1 minus epsilon. That means most of the time, this curve will lie inside this compact set k epsilon. So the G mod gamma is a non-compact space, and k epsilon is some large compact set depending on epsilon, and most of the percentage of your trajectory after translation by AT will fall inside k epsilon. That's their theorem. And there is a lot of history behind this kind of work. That's a work of Margulis and Dani in non-divergence properties, and it was very beautifully used by Kleinbach and Margulis to generalize and prove this kind of theorem. And if you look at it, this curve is exactly equal to, because AT normalize this U of Phi-s, you take it on the other side, then it will expand this Phi-s by e to the power nt. That's the, these are the eigenvalues you will get here. And so it's a very blown up curve in Rn minus 1. And it becomes very, very long. So as you make your T larger, this base point keeps moving, and this is a very long curve. So in some sense, you may think, will this curve will become dense in this space as T goes to infinity? Or more specifically, if I put a probability measure on this based on this parameter S, just make it a normalized probability measure, and for every T you choose this measure, so you will have a probability measure mu T on this homogeneous space G mod gamma. And this probability measure, what the theorem of Kleinbach and Margulis says, is that this probability measure will converge. So the Kleinbach and Margulis theorem says that there is no escape of mass. Okay, so you look at this mu T, then there is no escape of mass as T goes to infinity. In other words, you give any sequence Ti going to infinity, then after passing to a subsequence, you can show that this mu sub Ti will converge to a probability measure on G mod gamma and in the weak star topology. So the question that I wanted to ask is that, will this measure become a G invariant probability measure on G mod gamma? So answer of this question is yes. In 2009, I proved a theorem that if you take any, so just the meaning of what is weak star convergence is that given any f in compactly supported continuous function on G mod gamma, you take any x in G mod gamma, and you apply this curve phi of s, where s runs over J, and you translate it by AT, and you integrate your function f on this curve from s in J and divide by the length of J. And as T goes to infinity, you show that the integral of your function, so you have this function f on this, and the integral of the function along this curve actually is very close to the integration of the function on the whole space as T goes to infinity. And that's what you want to say. That's called equidistribution of the translates of curves. So what is the most important property of the curve I used here is that this curve phi is an analytic curve, but the condition is that its affine span is Rn minus 1. So this is the condition you needed for this theorem of Kleinbach and Margulis. And this is the most important condition, is that the affine span of the image of phi is Rn minus 1. So it doesn't live in a proper affine hyperplane. So this theorem has interesting number theoretic consequence related to Dirichlet's approximation. So we see that a point x in Rk is Dirichlet improvable if for some number alpha less than 1, and for all large T, there exists, so given any large T, you want some integer vector in Zk, so that if you look at its inner product with x, you get some real number, and that real number is very, very close to an integer, meaning when I write this symbol, to simplify my notation, when I write the symbol with this kind of bracket, I mean the distance of this object from the nearest integral point. So if it's in a vector space, then it's the nearest uh, integral vector. So here is just a real number, so it's a nearest integer. So distance from the nearest integer is less than alpha times t to the negative k, where the vector q in zk has subnorm less than capital T. This is just the coordinate-wise maximum. So if you bound the coordinate of this integer by t, then you can get approximation is alpha times t to the negative k, where for some alpha less than 1, you fix that and you want it for all large t to this to happen. It's important that you want it for all large t, not some. Dirichlet's theorem actually says, this is the pigeonhole principle he introduced in proving this theorem, is that if alpha is 1, if I put this number equal to 1, then in fact, for every real vector, you will have solution to this inequality. But making alpha less than 1 makes it special. And it turns out that Davenport and Schmidt in 1969 proved that almost every x in Rk is not Dirichlet improvable. So in the sense of Lebesgue measure, almost all points you cannot improve this condition for any alpha less than 1. And it turns out that Dani introduced a notion of how to connect how to connect Diophantine properties of this kind with orbits of diagonal groups and so on, that introduced a concept, and it's called now Dani's correspondence, and this was very well developed by Kleinbach and Weiss in one of his 2008 paper. And the above, so using Dani's correspondence, one can show that the above distribution theorem says that almost any point on this curve is not Dirichlet improvable. So we know that almost all points are not Dirichlet improvable, but there may be a set of measure 0 points which are Dirichlet improvable. And given a curve in Rn minus 1, the curve itself has measure 0. So you cannot know whether all of those points are actually improvable or not, but you actually prove here that if your curve has the affine span which is equal to Rn, then it is indeed almost all points on the curve are also not Dirichlet improvable. So our more interesting part is the proving the equidistribution theorem, as I mentioned above. But now what is left out is that what if affine span of my curve is a hyperplane, and say it's just an affine line. Suppose my curve is really just a piece of an affine line, which is given by phi s is equal to s comma a1s plus b1 dot 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 an minus 1 s plus bn minus 1. So I'm using the first coordinate of my affine line as just a free variable, and then other variables can be written in this term. So it involves two vectors, a1 to an minus 2 and b1 to bn minus 2, that will determine my line. So one would like to say somehow that if this affine line is like irrational, or maybe it satisfies some kind of Diophantine condition, then you would like similar kind of equidistribution theorem. And indeed, Anish Ghosh in his thesis in 2006, he extended this work of Langdon Margulis in this direction. He actually obtained certain Diophantine conditions on this coordinate a1 to an minus 1 and b1 to bn minus 2. Because phi n is element of Rn minus 1, and first one is s, so there are n minus 2 coordinates here. He made some, very precise results, and extended the work of Kleinbach and Margulis on Swain-Zug conjecture, not only for curves spanning whose span is Rn minus 1, but also for affine lines like this, and also for affine hyperplanes like this. So my question now is, what happens if we want to prove equidistribution theorem? We change the I tried this for many years and really couldn't make any progress in this. Uh, in different direction, my early result was only for SLNR mode, some lattice gamma, or my curves were inside SLNR. But Pengyu Yang in 2019 in his thesis generalized this equidistribution theorem for translates of curve on arbitrary G mod gamma for any semi-simple group G and any lattice gamma. So that was a very beautiful work, and he just did it in complete generality. He described what kind of curves are allowed to get equidistribution, and he described that in terms of certain Schubert varieties associated to AT in the general diagonalizable flow. So the main interesting thing he brought into his this game is Kemp's invariant theory, and that really helped a lot. But before I go to that, let me just recall the general strategy of the proof. So the general strategy of the proof is as follows: that my curve is of course like a a curve inside Rn minus 1, and you multiply it by AT, it gets expanded and it becomes a very blown up curve. Locally it is very straight, and locally it approximates a unipotent subgroup for a long length. And you can do, there is some very simple twisting argument using which you can almost essentially show that your measure, you can treat a slightly different situation and say that the measure is invariant under a unipotent one parameter subgroup. And once you know a measure on G mod gamma invariant under unipotent one parameter subgroup, you can apply Ratner's theorem. So classification of ergodic invariant measures under unipotent groups. This was actually conjectured by Dani based on Raghunathan's conjecture for orbit closures. And finally, it was actually proved by Marina Ratner in 2000, in around 1990. And she classified ergodic invariant measures for unipotent flows. So you use that classification that tells you how the limit measures can look like. And then you use a technology that was developed in the work of Dani and Margulis in proving non-divergence. And to conclude that if you consider our limit measure, if it does not converge to the Haar measure, but some measure which is invariant under unipotent one parameter subgroup, then you get some kind of boundedness of bounded linear dynamical condition. So you get some kind of representation theoretic condition, which will tell that if you don't equidistribute as you expect, then some linear dynamical condition will occur. What it means is that there is a finite dimensional representation of G over Q and a rational vector P such that, and you get a sequence gamma in gamma and some number C positive, such that if you take this rational vector, apply gamma I to this, because gamma is belong to integral lattice, this is a discrete set of points. You apply that to this G, where your original point X is G gamma, then you just apply this G here. Because these are up to gamma, it's okay, just choose one choice of G. And then you apply this curve U of Vs, and then you translate it by A sub Ti. You see, and then you look at sup over S. So the entire curve, if it pushes into some bounded set, then that's the only way you don't get equidistribution with mu sub G. Okay, so this is a linear dynamical condition that causes problem. It's possible that basically you want to say that if you want equidistribution, the P should be fixed by G itself. Then there is nothing happening. Okay, so you want to say this, if this happens, then something very special must be happening about this curve phi, and etc. So for example, in my earlier result, we showed that if phi is the affine span of phi is Rn minus 1, then this condition will actually imply that P is fixed by the entire group G. So there is nothing really happening in this condition. And that gave the result. But in general, if this is just a curve, a fine line, then what happens? So in using this kind of Kamp's theory, very recently with Dima Kleinbach, Nicolas de Sexay, Pengyu Yang, and myself, we proved that this theorem for SL3R, and it says that you do have the same equidistribution result provided you have some kind of condition on A and B. So if this equidistribution fails, then you will have a condition of this kind. And if the condition of this kind happens, then you can show that in fact this A and B should satisfy the following Diophantine approximation condition, which says that there exists some constant C positive and there exists infinitely many integers Q in Z, so that if I multiply Q with A and you look at its distance from the nearest integer, then that is less than or equal to C times Q to the negative 2. And the same Q will work for B, and also simultaneously we give the same estimate. So this kind of pairs A and B are very few. In fact, the work of Dodson shows that the Hausdorff dimension of such pairs in R2 is just 1. So there is very small number of pairs for which this will fail, and the rest of them, this is true. So you can ask what happens if you work with SLN. So if you, I guess that I didn't check the condition of Anish Ghosh. I think his condition would only require not going to infinity, in which case you can have a stronger, you can have a weaker or stronger Diophantine requirement for it to fail to have non-divergence. You probably would put some epsilon like this and so on. But let's, in our case, it's exactly this one. Now, about SLN, what can you do? So in SLN, many more possibilities than this kind of thing arise. It's a lot more complicated to analyze that bounded Diophantine condition that I mentioned before. And in a almost completed work with Pengyu Yang and myself, we proved the following. To simplify our situation, suppose my curve, phi s, is just a curve like this in this coordinate. It's just actually an affine line. And then I want a condition on this vector a1 to an minus 2 so that I get equidistribution. So you see, you get equidistribution if and only if this vector A and vector B satisfy one of the following Diophantine or number theoretic conditions. The first condition is very much similar and almost same as this condition. Just that you have A and B are just single elements in SL3, and here now you have vectors. So it's you have inner product instead of multiplication. You have a C positive, so that Q times A in the inner product is less than these numbers, and these powers you get is coming from AT, this power, and that's it. So you have this kind of Diophantine approximation that will be forced on you if you fail to equidistribute. Oh, maybe this is wrong, unless it's wrong. Unless it satisfies any of the following conditions. Okay, so if it satisfies this kind of strong Diophantine condition, then you will not have equidistribution. If it does not satisfy any of the three conditions, then you will have equidistribution. So first condition is the same as before, but a new condition occurs in this higher dimensional case. And the new condition is as follows, that my curve may lie inside a hyperplane defined over a number field K, and this number field K would be such that its index, so it's a real number field, and its index actually should divide n. So if my n is prime, for example, n is 3, then there is no such number 2 case does not occur. And in that case, my line is just contained in a proper affine subspace of Rn minus 1, which is defined over K. So proper affine subspace can be given in terms of matrices, because one matrix will define where the direction, and the other matrix will be translation. So together, all of the coordinates you can choose inside this number field K. So this second obstruction comes from this very specific number field situation. But then there is this number theoretic fact that this field extension, the degree, should divide n. Otherwise, it will occur. And the last condition is can occur if n is even degree, and you in that case there will be some a complicated condition involving exterior 2. And if you simplify it, the condition looks as follows. I don't think it's a good idea to go into details, but there are this antisymmetric integral matrix of this kind, and if you multiply A with this antisymmetric integral matrix, and you get a vector, 2D vector, 2D minus d-dimensional vector, and you look at closest integer distance from closest integral point, then that is less than or equal to this number. That happens simultaneously for A, B, and certain determinants involving A and B. So it's a little bit complicated condition, but that can happen only if A is n is even. And the point is that any one of these condition occurs, then you can definitely not get equidistribution. So it is really if and only if and sharp condition. There is a geometric meaning to all of this. And the corollary is that if my phi s does not satisfy any of the three conditions, then almost all points on my curve are not Dirichlet improvable. Now, Dirichlet improvable is not equivalent to equidistribution. So for example, in the SL3R case, you can actually prove that almost all lines on a non-rational line are not Dirichlet improvable. So all you need for Dirichlet improvability is just to say that there exists a sequence Ti going to infinity for which it converges to R measure, not necessarily for every sequence, but there exists a sequence Ti going to infinity. That makes a much weaker kind of condition. And for that, the Diophantine conditions would be different. We have not worked it out in the general case, but SL3R case, you just realize that you really don't have any condition except that your curve is not a rational line. That's it. And what involves in this is the Kamp's invariant numerical criterion to simplify the boundedness condition on the representations, because you see this, I have this boundedness condition for the representation, and this Kamp's criterion allows you to say that if this point, the G orbit of this point is not Zariski closed, then you can reduce it to this V to a fundamental representation and P to be some even exterior E2, exterior EK, that kind of vector. And secondly, from that, using certain ideas of David Simmons and Bruglia, which were communicated to us by Kleinberg and Dissexer respectively, both separately and independently, that you can further reduce it to a standard representation. So the game is to reduce your problem from complicated representation to simpler representations, and that gives you the simpler, writable conditions of this kind or checkable conditions of this kind. And so that is one part. And if G orbit is Zariski close and still that kind of things happen, then you will involve some theory of minuscule representation and involve some classification theory. And then at some stage you need to use Galois cohomology to get to rationality. And then that takes care of the three possible cases. In particular, for example, if n is prime, then you don't need condition 2 and 3, which are complicated. And secondly, this I only talked about a line, but you can also say that you take a curve whose affine span is hyperplane. And for that hyperplane, you more or less have the same kind of conditions on the defining matrices of the hyperplane, very similar to this. And again, your hyperplane should be contained in a proper affine subspace defined over K, and then K, and then this index should divide N and so on. That's a hyperplane case. And third case does not occur if hyperplane is, if it is not a itself a line. If there is no line, if it's a curve, but maybe sitting on some hyperplane, the number 3 case does not even occur. So, and if it's prime, then nothing divides N, so you have no condition. If it's prime, then it's only first condition is needed. And you can say that it's not divisionally improvable, and also you have equidistribution theorem. But here with this, I finish my talk. Thank you.
All right, so that was an excellent talk. Let's thank Professor Nimish Shah for that great talk. Are there any questions or comments?
Bruya wanted me to zoom into slide, but I missed the opportunity to do that.
Emmanuel, do you have a question?
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Yes, of course. Please go ahead.
Yeah, Nimish, I'm Sengupta.
Yes, I know that. Yes.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, so I wanted to know, so in your this thing, you're looking at only one-dimensional unipotent and the one-dimensional subgroups of the split Cartan, right?
No, one-dimensional subgroup of the split Cartan and full horosphere of the split Cartan, this kind of Cartan.
No, but your U of Phi was just
it's just one-dimensional. No, U is U of Phi. U is a unipotent group whole horosphere, and I'm taking a curve inside that horosphere.
Yeah,
curve
so
or a line.
curve. Okay, it's a curve in U. But
yes, it's a curve in U or a line in U. Curve was done earlier. Curve was done earlier.
Suppose you keep the curve, but you make a group A larger. Will it have any consequence like a simultaneous approximation from the number theoretic side?
Yes. So for a curve and looking at A, but the only kind of A I worked with is the first coordinate is positive and the rest of them are contracting. So the same horospherical, but the diagonal A can vary, and you can have this Minkowski kind of result.
I see.
Non-improvability. Yeah, you do have such a result for curves. We still don't clearly have a result, probably partially have it, but not clearly in the affine case yet, because it's part of the work, good piece of the work. Main ideas are done, but then for this kind of variations, it's not completed. There is a lot of things that can be done. Yeah, so at the moment, that's what.
Thank you. It was a very good talk.
I wish I could switch on my video, but I'm not able to do that.
Are there any other questions or comments? So Nimish, do you have a general conjecture about what should be the right conditions?
No. In fact, we didn't even expect that's these simple conditions. We thought that it will involve all kinds of number fields and all kinds of subgroups containing something here and there, and I thought it would be impossible. Really say we could probably have said some very general kind of things that it avoids closed orbits of groups and stuff like that, but it turns out using some ideas that came with a minuscule representation, there is a nice finite classification of possibilities of stabilizers that we get, and then based on that, we don't have much choices left. So it was a very interesting kind of thing. So not that many conditions are needed.
Right.
Yeah, that was a surprise. And these conditions were written only after the work was done. We just couldn't guess before that.
It's really a great result. Thank you so much. So if there are no further questions, let's thank Professor Nimish Shah once more.